morning, everyone. Thank you, HealthX, for inviting me. It's wonderful to be here. So, my story. I want to start with our deepest hungers. Raw food is very much known now. It's becoming more of a fad. Restaurants are opening all over the world. And because of my background as a counselor and a seminar leader in emotional intelligence and all kinds of healing themes, I have also understood some of the deeper hungers that we have. I will speak to some of these today. So my story begins with, I was in a physiology class as a junior in high school in the US, and we had to study the 4 food groups and study how they are produced or manufactured at the time. This would have been in the 70s, how they were manufactured at that time, and the effect physiologically it had on our bodies. And when I did that research, I was quite horrified at what I discovered. And there and then, and with the help of 2 other friends that had become vegetarian, I began to eat vegetarian and didn't really look back. I found I had greater amounts of energy, less fatigue, just a lightness in my body, and a lot less lethargy. I didn't feel the need for a nap after eating, so that was a big moment. And then I moved to France, and that was 26 years ago. And when I arrived in France, I was really confronted with comfort eating that I definitely was acting out. And I was confronted with a lot of slim women and a whole different way of eating, taking time and really digesting food properly, and a lot of what they call conviviality around the eating. And that had a real strong influence on me. And then I went vegan about 16 years ago, and then 15 years ago, I met my first raw foodist. I had never heard of it. I didn't know what that was. I was on holiday in Bali at an ashram, and I met this woman who had the whitest of white eyes. She had the clearest skin, and the thing that most impressed me is that here we were in a very tropical climate, and we were practicing yoga under this gazebo, and she wasn't perspiring at all, while the rest of us were dripping. And I would look at her, and she's just fresh as a flower, and I thought, how is she doing this? Or what is this? And so I got to know her over the 3 weeks that I was staying at this ashram, and was fascinated. But I was also aware, I was called to follow that and at least experiment with it, but I was aware of having Mexican origins, that nostalgia of food was just too much to let go of, that I had a real strong attachment to Mexican food, and there was no way that I was going to let that go. So, but she stayed with me. And then about nearly 3 years later, I was at a raw food retreat, and I stayed for 6 days, did yoga every day, did a lot of pranayama, strong breathing, and then we, at the end, we had to go around and say how that was for us. And I looked to the group of my colleagues that I had been with for that week, and I said, do you know, I feel the best I've ever felt my entire life. I have the most incredible energy levels. I feel so alert. I feel amazing. I look in the mirror, and I see a different face. But I'm not ready. I'm not ready tomorrow. I trust that tomorrow I'm going to go back to cook food. Now I know it's over. And I'm not ready, but I asked myself, why not? Why would I not want to feel this good all the time? Why just do a retreat to feel this good? So at that point, I said to myself, I need to really ask myself this question: why would I not want to feel this good? And what came to me was, am I lacking an actual spiritual self-confidence? If I would want to be in the light, why wouldn't I want to be in it all this time? Do I not believe I'm not worthy of that amount of light, that amount of goodness? So that question haunted me. And then 6 months later, a woman named Shazzy from Cambridge, UK, came out here to the Fairmont in Dubai and gave a full-day raw seminar with demonstrations, with theory, with yummy food. And during that seminar, I just knew, okay. Every single thing she said, I was nodding the entire day. I just felt this knowing. And as we do, as been mentioned already here today, you know, each person has their path. Each person has their calling. This had been a calling for 3 years, and I knew I could no longer ignore this calling. And so I said, I know this is it. I'm going to do it. I went home. I cried. I cried because I was scared. Does this mean my social life ends? Does this mean no one will ever invite me again? What does this mean for me? And I have found my way beautifully with that. So it's been 12 years since that day. That was October 10th. And so there was that. Now, why food? Now, Enzymes. Enzymes are the catalysts that make our digestive and metabolic functions run smoothly. We are born with a finite amount of enzymes. And so when we eat more than 51% or more of food in our diet, we replenish those enzymes. When food is cooked over 43 degrees, more or less, centigrade, and that would be about 115 Fahrenheit, what happens is that those enzymes and a lot of the vitamin content is killed off. Now, as a mother, I have, have a thermometer at the house for all times. And the few times that my daughter has had a fever, the big panic button is, in centigrade, do not let that fever get over 40 degrees. And then I started making the connection. And when I started looking into that, why is that so important as a mother, that I must be absolutely vigilant that her fever never get above that? And that's so that the brain does not have brain damage, that if there's too much heat on the body, it starts killing off the brain cells. And so then I started putting the two together, and I thought, oh my goodness me. So then the food we eat, if we cook that food over 40 degrees or 43 degrees, we start killing off its life force energy. And if when we die, as we well have known, if any of you have had the privilege to ever be with someone dying, that what happens is very shortly you start watching the body decompose quite quickly. That life force energy and all the mystery and all the spiritual mystery leaves the body, and that physical body begins to decompose. So I have seen the same thing definitely with, of course, for example, my almonds. If I take an almond, just a dried almond, a raw dried almond, it can stay, for example, I might have a little pack in my car in this warm climate. It just gets drier and drier. But if I soak it, if I leave it out for more than 2 hours in this climate, it starts decomposing immediately in terms of too much heat and that life force activity starting on it. So what I learned is the enzyme activity is incredibly important. Like I will repeat, when we eat 51% or more of fresh, raw food, and that doesn't mean just some lettuce leaves or carrot sticks. There's some amazing ways that you can make food by marinating it with amazing raw sauces that make it incredibly delicious. So it's not just these just raw vegetables or fruits, nothing done to them. So they're very delicious foods. Okay, now the benefits. Alertness. As a counselor, I have found my entire practice. I've been doing my work for over 30 years. When I went raw, my practice changed completely. I retained better memory. I had to take less client notes. I was more alert. I had an intuition that expanded far beyond that I ever realized I was capable of, even sometimes bordering on a bit psychic sometimes. I had incredible restful sleep. My sleep was balanced and very restful, not fitful or interrupted with indigestion. I also found that in terms of exercise, I'm a swimmer. I'm very much an athlete. I swim almost every morning. And that my exercise just had a balance to it and ease. I felt more lithe and more fluid in my body. And the other thing I mentioned too is aging. So I'm 53 years old. I found that as in my late 40s and right around 50, I definitely started feeling those real significant changes of aging. And I found that it was so much more graceful and fluid than a lot of people around me were struggling with. Because of that, I felt a lightness. Now, I'm going to show you 2 slides that show us some interesting statistics and proportions. A chimpanzee is physiologically the closest to us in terms of our physiology. And as you see, the chimpanzee's diet is mostly composed of fruits and greens. The standard American diet, which interestingly is also called the SAD diet, is composed mostly of starches. All right, unfortunately, it has not been one of our greatest exports to the rest of the world. All right, and that diet is now not just only the standard American diet, it has become the standard diet in many other cultures and is very much lacking that. So there's a bit of a discrepancy there. And we don't see obese chimpanzees, by the way. Now, a raw food diet, and this is really pretty much, this is almost, I would say, to the T of the percentage of exactly what my diet looks like. And so there's a gross difference, as you can see, between the raw food diet and the standard American diet. Now, 2 ways to understand. So for me, I also, I had a challenging adolescence, like I'm sure a lot of adolescents on our planet. It's a challenging time in the best of times. And I had some added difficulties in mine. And so during that time, I started to comfort eat. I never had a weight issue until my adolescence. I started putting on weight. I was never obese, by the way, but I definitely was slightly overweight, and I knew it, and it haunted me. And I felt like I had a monkey on my back. I knew I was eating for the wrong reasons, and I couldn't stop. And so in my 20s, when I arrived actually to France, I knew that I had to start facing this and really looking at it. And at that time, I already had been working as a counselor. And I needed to also be able to walk my talk, that I needed to be working in the field and have integrity in that emotionally. So I started looking at, okay, finding tools. And one was to put down the food, feel the feelings. And the other was to look at what emotional kind of gratification was a certain food going to give me. And I'm going to look at that with you. So how do you do that? How do you put down the food? Well, one of the things is asking, am I physically hungry? Am I emotionally hungry? The other is to get help from people that are on the same wavelength, that are struggling in the same way, giving them a call. And the other is really feeling the feelings, going past that taboo of vulnerability, which of course for men can be a lot more difficult with the socialization. And lastly, to know that feelings don't kill us. Let me stay with the feelings. Now, I want to just very quickly go through these, the correspondence of these. What I learned, both in my personal inquiry as well as working with people in my practice for all these 30-plus years, is that crunchy foods very often, when we're overdoing that, when we're going to these for emotional outlets, crunchy food is often angry. I'm angry about something, or I'm gnawing on something, or I'm frustrated, I'm chewing on a problem. The next one, milky foods. Mother is our first intimate relationship we ever had. It is also the relationship where our first food was milk, whether it was breast milk or whether it was bottled milk. And that food became comfort. And usually when we were ingesting that food, we were in the arms of a caretaker, mostly the mother, if not somebody else. And so when we are struggling with needing to be in that kind of nurturance and that holding, we'll go to those more milky foods, the yogurt, the ice cream, the creamy cheeses, milk. Starch and carbs, loneliness, looking for, to fill the void. Sugar, looking for love. Fatty foods, the bliss point. Fat, salt, and sugar together create that bliss point that millions of dollars are invested by into food engineers discovering that point, like in a Pringles or many other types of items that will take us to that point of feeling this bliss, like, I love that taste. And so fatty foods really go on that level. And when we're looking for that, we're looking for that bliss. Caffeine. If I'm bored in my job or I'm bored in my relationship, I'm needing a kick and go, I'm not finding a passion in my life, I'll go for that caffeine to give me energy to get through the day, rather than finding my passion or my real purpose, even if it's going to rock boats, to do what I'm really meant to do in this life. Chocolate is a mixture, either you've got the milk chocolate or the dark chocolate. Milk chocolate is milk with the caffeine of the cocoa bean, or dark chocolate's like a shot of espresso, and that is giving you joy, giving you motivation. Fizzy drinks, giving you a bit of sparkle, a bit of pizzazz, because it's lacking. And finally, meat. When we're excessive on the meat or we're attached to the meat, there's a place of wanting either groundedness. Sometimes it's to densify us, numb us, because the feelings or the sensitivities are getting too much. We want to make ourselves more dense. And then some other emotional telltale signs. Eating too late is wanting to bring somebody to bed with me, to bring somebody in bed inside with me. I'm lonely. I'm feeling empty. Traditional foods, I mentioned that already, the nostalgia factor, the sense of belonging, connection. Wrong food combining, never to mix protein with starch or eat fruit with other things. Fruit should be eaten by themselves. When we do wrong food combining, we have all kinds of bloating, indigestion, and it ferments and causes weight gain. That is when we're ignoring those signs of our body, it's because there are emotional factors that are actually running our show at that moment. Not eating, anorexia, and then the other counterpart is bulimia. This can often be, for anorexia, it's not wanting to live. I just have no desire to live. Anorexia and bulimia also can indicate sometimes some very deep abuse issues, sexual abuse, emotional abuse, physical abuse that very much needs treating. I already mentioned bulimia. Diabetes, of course, which this weekend there's a lot of focus on that. The pancreas is producing too much insulin or not enough. ignoring the signs. And then I had mentioned about the different kinds of hungers. A spiritual hunger, just to really get to the point, is that it's wanting to know that we are protected and held by a larger force. In this part of the world, there's a lot more spiritual holding and a lot more acknowledgement of spirituality through religion. But even within, we all have that struggle, no matter what our past is, to know that we are held by something greater than us. And what is self-confidence? I was talking earlier about why would I want to feel this good all the time? And is there a lack of spiritual self-confidence there? And it's that place where we know we are the light. In the Hindu tradition, it's the namaste greeting is the light in me salutes the light in you. It's that recognition that I am of light source. And finally, just the whole thing here about when I eat raw food, I am actually I'm eating the earth, I am eating life force unadulterated. And so when I'm eating life force, I'm actually eating a divine source. And so I'm in that connection directly. And the last thing I just want to say here is other sources of getting that life force without going to food. So one is getting enough sleep, breathing, exercise. We know all the benefits of incredible exercise with endorphins and balancing out our body. One of the most important things that's been for me, and particularly as an expatriate for most of my adult life, is finding like-minded people and loving company. The amount of Emoto, this Japanese man who's done a lot of work with the effect on cells and words and emotion, how much that is to our benefit. And, of course, inspirational reading. That gives us such inspiration. And the last thing I just want to offer here is just, if any of you would like, I have a free ebook on raw recipes that I have written that really makes raw food very fun and very delicious. So just drop me a line at my website, and I'll send you a copy of that. Okay? Thank you very much.